Natural lifters have to get strong if they want to get jacked. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And again, I understand this is a point of topic and a point of controversy and nuance potentially, but the simple reality is when you look at this, historically, if you hang around lifters like I have for decades and decades, what you find, the guys who are clean, who are really jacked, all tend to be really strong. Now, we could argue quite a bit about the chicken and the egg scenario, and I do fully agree with that because we do know that just getting jacked in general will absolutely raise your strength ceiling. This is not debated. However, one of the things that I have noticed over the years is that a lot of guys who are on a lot of stuff, they can focus a lot more on just exclusively pump work, and they get really, really jacked. And I've even seen Lyle McDonald point that out. He's like, yeah, I mean, the evidence kind of suggests when you understand how androgens and things work, that, just high rep, high volume pump work and really high volumes will absolutely cause profound muscle growth for people who are enhanced. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that their intermediate fibers can grow. In other words, when you're a natural lifter, all of your slower twitch and your more intermediate fibers, they cap out in growth, within a relatively short amount of time, meaning within a couple years of really hard training. And after that, almost all of your muscle growth comes from your more fast twitch fibers, which usually means you have to focus a lot on mechanical tension, right? You have to focus on mechanical tension in order to reach those fibers. Okay, so we're aware of this. And what ends up happening is, of course, you have to really focus on progressive overload over time to continue to recruit the muscle fibers that are capable of growing. So that's the point we need to be very, very clear about. Most of your muscle fibers will not grow anymore after you've been training 2 or 3 years. Okay? Let me state that again. After you have been training for 2 or 3 years, the majority, like over 90% of the muscle fibers in your body are going to stop growing as a result of training. This is why people plateau. And the muscle fibers, the only ones that are really growing to a large degree, are the fastest twitch muscle fibers, right? Those are the ones that are capable of growing almost your entire life. And they have an infinitely large amount of size. There doesn't seem to be an upper threshold to how big they can get. But again, that's why the gains slow down over the years. But to get to those, you have to keep progressively overloading. You've got to keep adding more tension. And just adding more and more reps isn't going to get it. And so when you see some of these studies, but this study showed these 30 and 40 rep sets and all this caused this growth. Yeah, in fairly novice lifters. See where we're going with that? Because a lot of their intermediate fibers and things can grow. Once you get a little bit more advanced, you've been training a couple years, that stops. That doesn't work so much anymore. And you have to focus on that mechanical tension. In other words, the bigger weights. And I don't even mean just a big bench press. I mean, even your curls need to be getting stronger. Your concentration curls need to be getting stronger. But the thing is, when we see the guys who are using a bunch of stuff, magical supplements, right? When they're using those things, they reach a point where those intermediate muscle fibers are still sensitized by these things. They get an anabolic response. So any training that is hitting the more endurance-oriented fibers still will cause them to gain muscle. Okay? See where we're going with that? So coming in and doing, a lot of pump work, doing 20, 25 sets of 15, 20, 30 reps, is going to cause a significant training response for people who are using a bunch of stuff. Plus, it mitigates the fatigue. Those things improve recovery of that tissue. So not only is it capable of getting a growth response from training that wouldn't produce the same response other than in a novice lifter, in a more advanced lifter, they're getting that training response. They're also offsetting some of the negatives of recovery because we have a lot of problems with like our calcium ion situation when we start trying to train like that to where it's hard to recover from it at the local level. But a lot of those things enhance that recovery. You see where we're going with this? So they can grow from stimulus that only novices would grow from, which again, some of that lighter just all out pump work, and they can recover from it easier because, again, we don't grow from training we don't recover from. So it produces a situation where a lot of those guys train that way, like, but they keep getting more and more jacked. Yeah, but they're also not natural. When you're trying to do it natural, those fibers are not going to grow anymore. Plus, when you do excessive volume, you have to be super dialed in to recover from it, right? There's going to be a finite amount of volume. And what you usually find, the biggest naturals and the biggest, most jacked guys who maybe are not natural, but they're very, very, very conservative with what they take, they almost always train fairly heavy, progressive overload, a little more moderate volume. They're under 20 sets a week. I'm not saying it has to be 5 or 6 like I often say can work, but they're usually way under 20 sets. They're usually capping it at 12 to 15. Pretty normal. But there's a large focus on progressive overload. And I'm not saying that progressive overload needs to be heavy 1s and 3s. It can be your 10 rep sets, right? But you need to be getting stronger. You have to add tension, okay? You have to add tension, and that tension is going to cause an increase in strength. In other words, if you take your bench from 135 for 10 to 225 for 10, you are going to be significantly stronger. Trust me, your max will have gone up 90 or 100 pounds, okay? You will be stronger automatically by default, even if you haven't tested a max at any point in there. Mainly because you're at that point, you're doing sets of 10 with what would have been your max, right? Because, 135 for 10, you're lucky to bench 225. Okay, you're lucky to bench it for 1 with that. You might. Depends on the person. But once you're doing it for 10, obviously your max is a lot higher than what you do for 10 reps. So you're going to be stronger. And that's the point I'm making here. The natural guys tend to be stronger also because they're having to do a lot of big compounds still, because you can't just come in and do endless pump work with isolation movements and still get jacked as an advanced drug-free lifter. It's not going to work that well. They're just going to tend to be stronger because they're still doing a lot of big movements. They're still doing them with pretty heavy weights, even if it's for a lot of reps. And that is what I mean by usually the biggest drug-free guys, biggest natural guys tend to be strong because they're moving heavy weight for a pretty good number of reps usually, okay? And that is almost always the case, and you rarely see exceptions to that, if ever. So again, the point I'm making is that it tends to go hand in hand. So in other words, you really do need to focus upon very serious long-term progressive overload and getting more and more weight on the bar, and meaning more weight with good form, with good range of motion, with quality reps, all those things. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.